Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we'll explore who Dementus is. One of the most interesting, complex, insane, and brutal villains we've seen in the Mad Max movie universe is Dementus, also known as Lord Dementus or Doctor Dementus. This character was a warlord who led a biker gang and gradually gained a lot of power in the Great Nothing and the desolate wasteland of Australia. At one point, he was even an ally of Immortan Joe. Dementus stands out as one of the most fascinating and remarkable characters, not only because of how crazy, brutal, and violent he can be, but also because his motivations are incredibly compelling, rooted in traumatic events that slowly stripped him of his humanity and sanity. In this video, I'll delve into the story and what we know about the origins of the villain Dementus in the movie Furiosa, part of the Mad Max saga. I'll also talk about his physical appearance and how it evolves throughout his story, reflecting his mental state and descent into madness. Additionally, we'll analyze his personality, behavior, incredible skills, and known weaknesses. Be warned, this video will contain spoilers for the new Furiosa movie. If you haven't watched it yet, I recommend stopping this video and coming back after you've seen it. Without further ado, let's begin. Dementus is the leader of a biker gang known as the Horde of Bikes. He's one of the most brutal warlords in the Great Nothing. While not much is revealed about his origins, it's heavily implied that, being significantly younger than Immortan Joe, Dementus was born and raised after the world's destruction, growing up in a post-apocalyptic wasteland filled with danger and death. We don't know exactly how he managed to survive in this environment, but we do know that he had a wife and young children. Though their names are not specified, it's implied they were a boy and a girl. He managed to survive with them for a long time, possibly with the help of his biker gang. However, on a fateful day, his wife and children were murdered. The identity of the perpetrators is unknown, but they could have been marauders like the Buzzards, known for being extremely violent, aggressive, and for killing without reason to steal supplies and resources like water. This tragedy utterly devastated Dementus, causing him to gradually lose his sanity and humanity. After the post-apocalyptic world took his family from him, Dementus went completely mad, primarily because he stopped feeling emotions such as happiness or anger. From that moment on, he led his gang across the deserts of Australia and the Great Nothing, searching for something to give his life a sense of purpose, or at the very least, to ease the pain of losing his family. Essentially, he was looking for a distraction. Dementus began conducting campaigns of conquest and battles against anyone who stood in his way, channeling his rage and frustration over his family's death. He also sought resources like gasoline, food, and water for himself and his gang. One day, while Dementus had set up camp near the Green Place, some of his lower-ranking men, while scouting, discovered a mysterious and unknown oasis. There lived a group of people known as the Vuvolini tribe, who were highly trained in combat and weaponry. This tribe lived in a place full of water and food, keeping its location secret and eliminating anyone who discovered their existence. They were well aware of the dangers posed by the brutal and insane inhabitants of the Great Nothing. When several of Dementus's men found the Green Place, they abducted the young girl Furiosa as proof of the oasis's existence. Furiosa's mother followed the trail of the kidnappers, taking down several of the men. However, one of them, nicknamed Toyum, managed to reach Dementus's camp with Furiosa, planning to offer her as a gift and evidence of the Green Place's existence. In return, he hoped to rise in rank within the gang, as he no longer wanted to remain in such a low position. Upon seeing the girl, Dementus's second-in-command and the organic mechanic noticed that she was hydrated, healthy, and well-fed, confirming that she came from a place with steady resources, free from radiation and contamination. This caught Dementus's attention. However, Furiosa remained silent and caused Toyum's motorcycle to malfunction, resulting in a brutal accident that left him hanged and his throat cut, bleeding out. When Toyum was brought before Dementus, he couldn't explain the Green Place's location and subsequently died. Despite all this, Dementus acts calmly at this point, Although he has gone through tragedies and terrible experiences, he hasn't completely lost hope or fully succumbed to madness. For this reason, he behaves kindly toward Furiosa, ordering his people to clean her up, feed her, and give her water, as his goal is to earn her trust so she will reveal the location of her home, enabling him to conquer it. During these moments, Furiosa's mother makes a valiant attempt to rescue her daughter. However, by choosing not to kill one of Dementus's female gang members, the woman manages to sound the alarm, causing the warlord and his men to chase Mari, Furiosa's mother, and her daughter. Mari orders Furiosa to escape to the green place, while she stays behind to distract them and take down as many as she can. From a distance, Furiosa watches as her mother is captured, overwhelmed by their numbers. Determined to save her, she returns, but she ends up being captured again. At this point, Dementus and his men crucify Mari in an X position and light a fire beneath her as a method of torture, intending to force her to reveal the location of the green place. Despite the passage of time and the pain inflicted, Mari says nothing. Ultimately, she is killed in front of Furiosa, whom Dementus forces to witness her mother's death. This moment marks a pivotal turning point in the relationship between Dementus and Furiosa, creating a strange and dark bond. For Furiosa, Dementus becomes the target of her vengeance, someone she is determined to destroy at all costs. For Dementus, this grotesque act signifies a definitive loss of innocence, as by killing Furiosa's mother in such a horrific manner, he begins his complete descent into madness. In a disturbing twist, he adopts Furiosa as his daughter, experiencing emotions he hadn't felt since the death of his own family. This occurs after a long time of feeling nothing, sparked by the act of killing Mari. Dementus places Furiosa under the care of the History Man, an old man tasked with collecting, memorizing, and reciting information when needed. Curiously, Dementus gives Furiosa a teddy bear that was very important to him, as it had belonged to his deceased children. He always carried it with him on the back of his tunic. He hands this item to Furiosa so she has something to hold on to while he exposes her to the brutality of the desert wasteland. On one occasion, Dementus orders the execution of a man by tying his limbs to different motorcycles and brutally tearing him apart. He grows somewhat fond of Furiosa and tells her not to watch, or if she wants to, that she should be prepared to witness a terrible death. Despite everything, he assures her that these experiences will make her stronger. Later, Dementus and his gang, called the Horde of Motorcycles, arrive at Immortan Joe's citadel. There, they find an injured war boy who guides them to the location. Dementus attempts to conquer the citadel, which belongs to Immortan Joe and his sons. However, realizing he stands no chance, since the war boys are willing to sacrifice themselves for their leader, and failing to convince the inhabitants to rebel against their oppressors, Dementus orders a retreat. This happens after the group begins attacking his men and trying to steal his motorcycle convoy, along with Furiosa and the History Man. After the retreat, Dementus orders some of his men to monitor the activities of the war boys and their cult of engines. This is how he learns that Immortan Joe periodically sends his truck to Gastown to refuel. Dementus orchestrates an ambush, disguising several men from his ally Octoboss as war boys. They successfully hijack the truck and infiltrate Gastown, sacrificing many of Octoboss's men in the process. Using Immortan Joe's special trailer, they conquer the refinery and claim it as their own. Dementus requests a meeting with Immortan Joe and his sons to negotiate peace, demanding to be recognized as the legitimate leader of Gastown. To prevent further loss of life among his people, Immortan Joe agrees to acknowledge him as leader, but asks for Furiosa and the organic mechanic in return. Reluctantly, Dementus agrees. At that moment, he takes the teddy bear from Furiosa, breaking the bond he had formed with her as his adopted daughter. The deal stipulates that Immortan Joe will supply water and food to Gastown from the Citadel for 15 years in exchange for fuel. During this time, Dementus serves as the leader of Gastown, but eventually he grows bored of his position. His mental state deteriorates further, leading to complete instability. This is how Dementus began hoarding most of the food and water, consuming them with his trusted men instead of distributing them among the people of Gasoline Town, who worked in the oil refinery. This caused great discontent among the inhabitants, who began planning a rebellion against Dementus. Although this warlord blamed others for everything that went wrong, no one believed him, and little by little, they organized a revolution against him. During one of the trips made by Furiosa and her companion Jack, they did not receive the fuel they needed from Gasoline Town. This was because, after being denied food and water, the inhabitants started attacking Dementus and his men, forcing Immortan Joe's truck to leave without ensuring the deal was honored. For this reason, Dementus informed Furiosa and Jack that he would meet with Immortan Joe and the head of Bullet Town, known as the Farmer, in 3 days to discuss the situation. Curiously, during this time, Dementus was with his adoptive daughter, but did not recognize her due to the stress he was under. Deciding to take advantage of the farmer's absence, as he was in the Citadel attending a meeting with Immortan Joe, Dementus led his entire horde of bikers to invade the bullet factory, killing all the workers and claiming the location as his own. At that moment, Furiosa and Jack were on an errand to collect bullets from the factory and stumbled upon the terrible massacre. This led to a brutal fight between Dementus, his men, Furiosa, Jack, and the war boys. The battle culminated in Dementus chasing Furiosa and Jack deep into the desert, gravely wounding Jack and capturing him, while leaving Furiosa seriously injured as well. Dementus hung Furiosa by her fractured arm, forcing her to watch as his men dragged Jack across the ground, leaving him to be devoured alive by dogs. Before all this, Dementus delivered a speech about hopelessness, stating that in this post-apocalyptic world and the Great Nothing, hope could not exist, as it only brought suffering and death. After hours of torturing Jack and Furiosa, Dementus, in a psychotic state, grew bored and decided to punish Furiosa. However, he realized that she had managed to cut her arm free and escape, stealing one of his men's motorcycles while they were distracted. Furiosa used this opportunity to sabotage his truck and other motorcycles, preventing them from catching her. Severely wounded, she returned to the Citadel, where she was helped and saved. Meanwhile, Dementus orchestrated a controlled fire that produced heavy smoke in Gasoline Town, using it as a trap to lure Immortan Joe and his army to the area. This would facilitate Dementus and his men's conquest of the Citadel. However, Immortan Joe quickly realized the situation thanks to Furiosa, who confirmed it was a trap. This triggered the War of 40 Days between Immortan Joe, his sons, the War Boys, and Dementus along with his men for control of the 3 most powerful cities in the Great Nothing. After a bloody war, Dementus and the few men he had left tried to escape deep into the desert to start a new gang. However, Furiosa pursued them relentlessly. Dementus used several of his men as distractions, but was eventually found and ambushed by Furiosa, who he still did not recognize. At that moment, she attacked him, confronting him about everything he had taken from her: her mother, her childhood, her innocence, and Jack, whom he had recently killed. Dementus responded that he could not give her anything back, and that they were both the same, since the wasteland had taken everything from them and turned them into monsters. When Dementus faked a seizure, Furiosa took his teddy bear. It was at that moment that the warlord finally recognized her as his adoptive daughter, Little Deeb or Little Dementus. Ironically, he told her to execute her revenge in an epic manner, though he warned her that it would not fulfill her or leave her satisfied. According to Immortan Joe's history man, Dementus's fate was unique and brutal. Furiosa brought him to the Citadel, where she planted a peach tree in the soil beneath him, leaving him gravely injured and unable to move. The tree began to grow through his body, keeping him alive, while Furiosa constantly fed and watered him. Dementus was trapped in perpetual suffering for the rest of his days. Here ends Dementus's story in the Mad Max universe. Now that we have explored his tale, we will analyze his physical appearance, how it changed with his mental state, what we know about his complex personality and behavior, as well as his known skills and weaknesses. Initially, Dementus is described as a middle-aged man, between 40 and 50 years old, tall, muscular, and burly. He has a prominent beard and long hair, appearing surprisingly clean and well-groomed despite living in a post-apocalyptic world. This distinguishes him notably from his men, who appear disheveled and unkempt. Unlike other characters in the Wasteland, such as Immortan Joe, Dementus does not show signs of tumors, burns, or radiation scars. His main attire includes a leather vest and pants, biker gloves, and a belt with a large buckle. Additionally, he carries a silver revolver in a holster on the right side of his pants. A distinctive element of his outfit is a torn parachute that he uses as a cape and an integral part of his appearance. Although at first he used it as a sort of tunic that completely covered him and included a hood, Dementus later used it only as a cape. He always carried a teddy bear belonging to his deceased children, which could be tied to his cape, on his chest alongside his vest, or at his waist. Dementus's attire is laden with symbolism and reflects his transformation as a character. Initially, when he meets Furiosa, he wears the parachute as an entirely white hood, symbolizing a degree of peace and innocence. However, after killing Mariavasa, Furiosa's mother, and brutally murdering some desert marauders, his cape and entire outfit turn red due to a flare that hits him. Interestingly, this change symbolizes his transformation into Red Dementus, as he is completely consumed by his violent impulses, repressed anger, and brutal rage after losing his family. At this point, he succumbs to his thirst for power, sacrificing his allies and loyal men without hesitation to achieve his goals in a cold and ruthless manner. Although he grows fond of Furiosa and sees her as his adoptive daughter, he does not hesitate to offer her to the Citadel and Immortan Joe in exchange for gaining more power and legitimate control over Gasoline Town. During the 15 years he ruled that place, Dementus allowed himself to be increasingly consumed by his darkness, rage, and pain, which he could not alleviate. For this reason, his home, which once had paintings and murals, ended up covered in filth and blood. His cape turned black with small traces of red, and his beard and hair turned gray. His outfit, initially clean and pristine, deteriorated into a filthy and ragged state, reflecting his true mental condition, unstable and psychotic. Thus was born Dark Dementus, a barbarian guided solely by his primal instincts and accumulated rage. Dementus possesses a highly complex personality. Despite being embittered and frustrated by the death of his family, which drove him mad in a sense, he initially managed to control his emotions. He was charismatic, had a somewhat comedic sense of humor, and a fun personality, although he was clearly disturbed. He was functional and a good leader for his men. It is important to note that he was also very intelligent, intimidating, manipulative, and deceitful. However, Dementus was emotionally and mentally broken. Having lost his family and purpose in life, he developed a subconscious pattern of destroying everything he built because he needed to feel something again. He confessed to Furiosa that he felt nothing, and this drove him to seek emotions or moments of happiness, even if fleeting. When he demonstrated brutality or acted in an evil and vengeful manner, he experienced brief moments of satisfaction. However, he quickly grew bored and needed something new to stimulate his mind and feel alive. This constant desire for new emotions made him unpredictable and dangerous. He was neither foolish nor a bad leader, but a broken man seeking to fill his emotional void with new experiences. This makes Dementus one of the most complex and, to some extent, tragic characters in the Mad Max saga. He did not flee from Furiosa or the War of 40 Days out of cowardice, but because he understood that the battle no longer offered him anything new or exciting. By attempting to escape, he planned to start anew elsewhere, creating a similar system to experience new emotions and continue living. Dementus had incredible skills that made him a formidable enemy. He was an expert in handling motorcycles and other vehicles like trucks and cars, although he preferred using his motorcycle chariot. He was physically strong and a master of hand-to-hand combat, as well as skilled in using all kinds of weapons, from knives to rocket launchers and rifles. Like Max Rokitansky, he had a high tolerance for pain, allowing him to keep fighting and surviving even when gravely injured. He was charismatic and had manipulation skills, as well as being strategic and tactical in his attacks. However, his greatest weakness was his madness and mental instability, which led him to act impulsively and destroy what he had built. This weakness was his downfall, leaving him vulnerable to Furiosa. In conclusion, this is everything we know about Dementus, the villain in the Furiosa movie from the Mad Max saga. Personally, I believe this villain is one of the most interesting in the saga, not just because of his physical appearance, brutality, or evilness, but because of his psychological and emotional depth. His character as a broken man, seeking to ease his pain through his actions, makes him unique and complex, standing out as a memorable villain. Like Max, Dementus lost everything he loved, but chose to take a dark and sinister path, becoming a ruthless villain who delves into the depths of his soul. This makes him an interesting and tragic antagonist. What do you think? Were you familiar with Dementus' story? Do you consider him a tragic villain or purely evil? Leave your answer and opinion about this character in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it, and subscribe to the channel to avoid missing any of my new videos. Thanks for watching,